Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we are positive, daring, different, and starting off our day right with a great mug of Don's tea. Totally Sri Lankan, 100% Ceylon tea, grown, handpicked and packaged in Sri Lanka. Now let's travel to Sri Lanka's most famous tourist spot that you've never heard of, Pimburattewa Lake in Aralaganvilla, Polonnaruwa. Built in 1969, the lake has a unique triangle-shaped drop-off structure and some exquisite views. Have a refreshing dip and an Ellie might just come by to keep you company. Later on in the show, an artist who wants us to remember, an optimistic economic expert and a master pizza maker. A great big thank you to our wonderful partners Srilanka Live, CDB, The Daily Morning and Don's Tea. Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. Subscribe and follow if you like our show.
You can now start a CDB iDeposit digital fixed deposit and experience a range of special benefits from CDB.
This is CDB Snapshot, where we take a quick look at the week that was. Sri Lanka's official reserve assets increased to $3,762 million in July compared to $3,724 million in June. Sri Lanka's budget deficit for the first 5 months of 2023 crosses the 1 trillion rupee mark as expenditure rose by 47% and revenue by 38%. The Chinese government awards full scholarships to 40 Lankan students at over 30 top Chinese universities. Sri Lanka's Gayantika Abiratna, Dilhani Lekamge and Aruna Darshana qualify for the 2023 World Athletic Championships. An ancient ornate necklace found in a 9,000-year-old village in Jordan has been reassembled. No small fry, an Irish photographer sells one of his potato photographs for $1 million.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Life News Capsule. Is the worst behind us in Sri Lanka or is it yet to come? Sri Lanka has been recording positive numbers in tourism, inflation rates and other indicators, but with the IMF's presence and the restructuring of SOEs constantly weighing on the country's shoulders, doubts do persist. On the converse, there's the discussion that it's a good time to rebuild. With us today is economist and expert at the World Economic Forum, Talal Rafi, for a bit of an optimistic look at the current status quo. Just to get an idea of what your thinking is like, how do you see Sri Lanka right now from a macro perspective?
From a macroeconomic perspective, we are definitely not out of the woods yet. So there's a long way to go. But right now, things are looking positive, all the indicators. I mean, inflation is coming down and interest rates are set to come down even further, if you look at the recent report by HSBC. And also, the central bank's reserves are also going up and most of the import restrictions are being taken off. So I see that though we may be posting a negative growth for this year, the last quarter will be quite positive. So towards next year, we'll see economic growth once again.
You're an optimist, I know. Do you see opportunity in this unprecedented economic crisis that we went through?
I'd like to be optimistic, knowing that as a Sri Lankan, we are very resilient. But there is a lot of opportunity, especially if we are going to use this crisis. As Winston Churchill says, never waste a crisis. So like many countries, like for example, Thailand or India, they all used a crisis to do structural reforms. Like the best example would be India. In 1991, they went through a crisis. So that kind of made it possible to do some of the reforms. Like even in Sri Lanka, so there are some very tough structural reforms, like SOE reforms, central bank independence, labor laws and land law reforms. These are only possible when the entire nation knows that it has to be done within a certain time. So I think this would be a good opportunity for us to get things right.
What are your concerns in getting Sri Lanka somewhere back on track?
Though this crisis is a good opportunity, there are some certain consensus. One thing is political consensus. That's quite needed. You see, just to go back in history, since we started opening our economy in 1977, from 1977 till 2005, there has been a sort of a broader consensus on how the economy should go forward. There was even though there were three presidents, President J.R. Jayawardena, President Rana Singha Premadasa, and then President Chandrika Bandaranaike, who was from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. So even President Chandrika Bandaranaike sort of continued the economic policies of the past two presidents. Privatization was continued under CBK, like privatizing Sri Lanka Telecom. What I see is that after the mid-2000s, there was a sort of a change. You see, the public sector started growing, and then trade, we sort of shifted towards import substitution. So here again, I feel that we need to have a broader consensus. You see, in countries such as India and Thailand, there is no debate about whether privatization is right or wrong, whether we should be reducing the public sector size. So there is a sort of a national consensus, and both the BJP and the Indian National Congress are sort of like broadly agreeing on certain principles. So that's what I see as a major concern. So we need to move in that path.
And here's our market sketch today. Here's an interesting twist. India's crude oil imports from Russia in June were the cheapest since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, during which time the world's third largest importer became a key Russian oil customer alongside China. The average cost of a barrel of Russian crude that landed at India's ports in June was at $68.17 per barrel, while the rest of the world continued to pay just slightly above $80 per barrel. Gold prices fell slightly this week to $1,934 per ounce as the US dollar and treasury yields rose. The already dazzling city of Rome adds a new attraction, the ruins of Emperor Nero's private theatre just meters from the Vatican. It's where the 1st century Roman emperor rehearsed poetry and music. Talk about the power of a good book. Turkish garbage collectors opened a library with over 25,000 books thrown out by people. They converted a truck into a mobile library, taking books to nearby schools and libraries. Every year, internationally acclaimed artist Chandragupta Tenwara has a commemoration of an era we like to forget, but one that we must remember to make sure that it never happens again. The Tamil pogrom of 1983 and the fallout thereafter, 40 years on, the wounds have not healed. The ensuing political climate, Sinhala chauvinism, narrow-minded nationalism, militarism, there's religious extremism and socialism, as well as anti-West sentiment, are what he explores. This year, Chandragupta showcases thought-provoking new works in 3 exhibitions: Covert, Delusion and Fragile, in 3 galleries simultaneously: the Saskia Fernando Gallery, the Lionel Grant Art Gallery and the JDA Pereira Gallery.
Covert is the kind of response to what is happening around me, and always I'll do that. Anything happen around me, it's reflected in my art. That's hiding things, camouflage. That is why the name came from, that covert.
Chandragupta, 26 years you have been working annually on allowing us to remember what we really don't want to remember.
Yeah.
Have there been any revelations, maybe from last year to this year?
We are in the delusional disorder. So we are believing, we thinking someone will haunting us all the time. They are trying to destroy us. Islamophobia again, and Buddhism has to be protected. So those are the things, might be the things. Now I have more issues, but it was happening all the time. With the 13th Amendment discussion with President start last year, these things started. So that is why that new focus is coming up. Yeah.
Has anything changed from your perceptions of last year to this year?
Change is not happening because the asking about the word systems, because we have no system at all to change. Everybody is trying to live somehow. So that is why the little bit less political issues among the people, but the violence are there. Even though we have some kind of democratic space, and sometimes we have a hypocritic space with the militarization. We have to have a polite society. Now we are having policed society.
This space took you 2.5 years to complete.
Yeah.
Tell me very briefly about what this represents.
It represents our situation last 2 years, and it's still there because those are the violence, mishaps, and extremist religious extremism and rape, abductions, and killings, and abuse of power, misuse of religious concept to the politicization. So those are the things. It's like arranged like the beautifully. It's like we are living in Sri Lanka beautifully with all the mishaps. Those are the things I want to provoke the people's minds. So how the so-called religious institute became more than military. They are giving kind of control and to the people's mind. Stupamania, that's the new word I'm going to introduce. Everywhere you are making the stupas, and it is kind of again that insecure feeling of the Buddhist, so-called Sinhala Buddhist. Buddhism has not to be protected. Should be there. It's like a dharma. Asking question when you see the motifs, so why it is there suddenly with the flower and weapon, why it is hidden here. So then you will find, yes, it's any society might be there. When you are looking at the society, it's look like a beautiful, but a lot of hidden things happening there. So then, this is my society.
Being an artist, and given that you've represented this for the last 2.5 decades, what do you hope to achieve?
To empower the people, not the governments. The people has to be independent. So then we don't have to venerate the politicians. Politicians has to be the servants of the people. That's the point we have to make it. So if you are independent, you are not depending on the government, so you are free. Then politicians will come up, they will venerate you.
This place, Giovanni's, in the heart of Pimburattewa, is always buzzing. It's buzzing because it has some of the best pizzas in town. But it's not just about the pizzas, it's about a labor of love.
Crust. I would say it's a crust. Love. Giovanni's was something I was dreaming. When I was away from the country, from my home, I always dream about it. Married to Italian, I remember one of the first date we went out for a pizza. It's here in Sri Lanka, down Hikkaduwa. She was running a restaurant here in Sri Lanka, in Galle. She was Italian. It was Italian restaurant, but she never made pizza in that restaurant. I still remember it was just a roti. I started baking the roti in the oven, then taking it out, put in the sauce, then again baking in the oven, then taking it out, then again put in the cheese and the topping. I know now it wasn't pizza, but every time that I tried, she kept appreciating, wow. First of all, I wanted to learn how to build the oven, the proper wood oven. Then I went to Italy for 3 months, start working in a pizzeria in Milano. The guy, he had a business which is building a pizza oven as well. The first thing that I learned how to make a pizza oven. I remember the first pizza I tried with anchovies, with a bit of capers, oregano. The taste was a bit too salt, but when you keep biting it, I felt, okay, I belongs to this island.
So, it's nothing like a warm cup of Don's black tea to sit back and relax. I'll see you next week.